Well, I will never not laugh at the wrong direction ending. That's pretty on par, I think, for everything we're doing. Welcome, everyone. My name is Ryan Kovar. This is Audra Streetman and Mick, the beloved Mick. And we are here today to do another Coffee Talk with Serge. Usually these take about 20 minutes to go through, 20 to 30 minutes tops, but we have a full show today. We're going to talk a little bit about Follina, not just a shampoo and cheese, but also a delicious little excitement that popped up over the holiday weekend. Do a little bit of a ransomware roundup because there's been some modifications there, and then supply chain, because when do we not talk about supply chain or ransomware? I think it's just about every day. Then we will slide quickly into a charity challenge today about LOLBins, and then finish off with something that hopefully people have already read, and if not, welcome to the party, the Verizon DBIR. So thanks for joining, and let's get started. Audra, what's the first on the docket?
Well, I don't know if you guys saw, but over the weekend, there was a new 0-day vulnerability that came out. This is CVE 2022 30190. So this one, it abuses the Microsoft Support Diagnostic Tool protocol handler to achieve remote code execution in Office. So Kevin Beaumont dubbed this Follina, as you mentioned, Ryan, and there doesn't appear to be a patch out yet. So security researchers at NowSec, they stumbled upon a sample on VirusTotal. And the way that this works is that the victim downloads a malicious Office document from an email, and basically it has an embedded HTML link. And when you open it or even preview the doc, if it's saved as a RTF or a rich text format, Word retrieves the content from that link, which
Oh no.
Sadly, we'll never find out
What
the
happened?
end.
arbitrary applications, including PowerShell scripts. So basically, an adversary could gain initial access under the privileges of whoever downloads this document. And then from there, they could potentially disable protection tools or download a backdoor, basically do whatever they want once they have that initial access and those privileges. And so back in April, we learned just yesterday, a Twitter user named crazyman_army with the shadow chasers, he reported the threat to Microsoft. But in a screenshot that I saw on Twitter, it appears that a Microsoft rep dismissed it, saying that MSDT would normally prompt for a passcode. But as I saw Will Dorman point out on Twitter, basically the size of the retrieved HTML, if it's more than 4,096 bytes, then it will execute code and you won't be prompted for a passcode. So I guess that was a misunderstanding, but now Microsoft has a blog out, which I think we pulled up a second ago, with some recommended mitigations. And I know there's also some Splunk searches that we're looking into as well to help with the hunting. So what do you guys make of this so far?
Shannon Davis, our beloved Australian colleague, did not have the day off yesterday, so he wrote up a whole bunch of stuff. As I know, did the enterprise or the threat research team. I know Jose and Mauricio and Michael have all done a whole bunch of great work, and I think they've already published. I think Michael has already a tweet out where they've published in the research or the GitHub for the team with some, specifically enterprise security content updates, and we have a blog. Hopefully, they'll drop pretty shortly here to help folks out with more Splunkspiration, if you will. But this is not an end of day thing, in my opinion. Like, it's bad, but it's a Wednesday. Mick, are you smirking out of?
I just want to point out I can't hold it in. I have gotten many an email in my career addressed to no hack me, but never from Microsoft. And to have that email come back to address to crazyman_army, it is amazing. I just want to be that Microsoft rep that was, dear crazy man army. It's dismissed. To your point, I think it's a big deal. It's not a huge deal. I heard vaguely about it when I checked Twitter for a half second this weekend, but I pretty much unplugged. So I think it's bad. I think it's whatever badness was going to happen probably happened back in April.
Yeah, Audra, you said that there's actually been reports already of some APT groups using this new vuln. Is that correct? Sadly, we'll never know on the muted side.
I bet she's going to say yes.
Sorry, I was typing and I didn't want my keyboard to be too loud. So Proofpoint, I saw on Twitter that Proofpoint tagged a Chinese APT group using Follina just not that long ago, within the last hour. So that's using to deliver zip archives, which contain Word documents that use this technique. So we're already seeing it, used in the wild outside of this sample. So we'll see. I mean, it's possible that it could be more widely exploited in the days ahead, especially since there's not a patch available.
Right. Well, I mean, Proofpoint has an excellent team, so that's not surprising. They would have had some telemetry on that with the email, and they got great folks, so I 100% buy off on that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is another case of LOLBins, which we'll talk about in a little while, but, that concept of using things that exist in a system rather than trying to corrupt something, right? This is actual, it's a vulnerability because it's being used in a way not expected, but it's still just using tools that exist on the system. It's not introducing, it's not hacking anything from my understanding. It's just like, oh, if I use this command in this way, unexpected things will occur.
But it's assigned to CVE, so I mean that's the bar we're having. That's the bar we have, right? And the other thing I noticed when it was assigned that we're right around June, and this is CVE like 30,000 and some change. I don't know. That's not great. It's
not great. It's we've done a lot of these, but we've talked a lot more about other things like ransomware. Anything changed there, Audra?
So we have several ransomware updates. The first one, REvil, you might remember back in January, several suspected REvil operatives were arrested by Russia, and this was a joint investigation with Russia and the United States. But we've learned that the prosecution of these suspects has stalled, and that's according to a report by Cybersecurity. An attorney for one of the suspects told a Russian media outlet that the impasse is due to a lack of U.S. cooperation. Which makes sense given the current geopolitical, everything happening with the war in Ukraine. And so it makes sense that maybe communication between the US and Russia has stopped. Meanwhile, the Clop ransomware group is back. So after shutting down their operation for several months, the group added 21 victims to their data leak site in April. And most of these victims are industrial organizations and tech companies, according to Bleeping Computer. And Costa Rica cannot catch a break. They are dealing with another cybersecurity incident. Early this morning, a government official confirmed that the Costa Rican Social Security Fund was hacked. And this comes right after, you might recall, Costa Rica declared a state of emergency after a ransomware attack by Conti. So far, there's no information linking Conti to this latest incident, but Conti did claim that they were working to gain access to other government systems in Costa Rica. And I did see Brian Krebs earlier posted on Twitter that the ransom note from this latest hack appears to be from the Hive ransomware group. But again, a lot of these ransomware affiliates, they might work for Hive, they might work for Conti. So it's still unclear who's behind this, but definitely something to keep an eye on.
So does anyone think that by moving to Bitcoin as legal tender, Costa Rica government increased its risk at all? I mean, minimally, they can't claim they don't know how to use it.
Fair. Or still can, but I think technology may have been, like a kind of given to them without explanation. I think the crazy thing for me, and like, hey, let's talk about ransomware. These are essentially 3 stories that are all major events on their own. And we're just, hey, look, this is what happened Tuesday. It's just, that's the way the world is now. I think the Costa Rica angle is really, really interesting because this is a country that's not working right now. That's in a state of emergency. And that's kind of a big deal. And I'm curious if that's something that can be copied now that it works.
Well, I heard they're going down the route of we don't negotiate with terrorists. So I believe the first time was Conti kind of cut him a deal, and then Costa Rica came back and said we're not paying, and then I believe Conti raised the ransom like 2x, right?
Yeah, 20 million, and then the U.S. I think it was the State Department put out a $10 million reward for information about Conti in response to that.
I mean, it's just sucks. Like, what do you do?
That's all you can say.
I mean, I think like the hardline stance by the government, that's a choice, the politicians make. But a citizen of the country, that doesn't really do me much good if I have to file my taxes by hand, if I can't use
No,
public services.
but
That's a really big deal. So I'm super curious how this plays out, and if at some point does someone come to the aid of Costa Rica technically.
well, I had I haven't looked too far into it. My understanding is this was a very widespread ransomware. It wasn't just like, oh, we did the, driver's license database and we did the taxes. It's like whole systems across whole networks, right? And my problem there is, sadly, we never quite got to this in the research that Shannon did, but there is not super great evidence that even when you get the decryption key, that like you're walking away from that in minutes. Like minimally, it's hours or days, and you're
I think there
hoping the
was
decryption keys work.
someone like estimated the cost of the recovery itself, and it's like a third of the ransom or half of the ransom that we would have paid. So I think that's a very fair point. I think the point about REvil and Russia not prosecuting, or the prosecution kind of stalling because of the geopolitical situation. I mean, if you expected that prosecution to continue with any merit inside of Russia, I mean, okay.
Yeah, I guess I'm curious partly like as Russia has started disconnecting itself from the internet. That's going to be interesting when you still see areas attacking, because there is going to be a point where people are going to be able to get, kind of like North Korea. There's only a couple places to get out of the internet from North Korea. A lot of researchers who focus on that know some of them. Obviously, cell phones, satellite phones make that harder. And just because you are a Russian affiliated ransomware gang doesn't necessarily mean you live in Russia. But I am curious to see like if that reduction, like there was a little bit of a drop off. Now we're starting to obviously see a pickup again. Is this they've let loose the dogs of war, or is this just our operations were a little confused with the whole, war thing? Sorry, military operation. Like, I'm curious to see where that's going to go.
Well, I think Klopp is back, so
Yeah.
ransomware is not going away. Like what was it, Audra? 20 targets in a month.
21, yeah, in April. So just not that long ago. So, and the other interesting thing too, I forgot to mention with Conti in Costa Rica, Conti claims they have someone inside the government. So like an insider threat type scenario potentially. So that's something else to consider too. Are people collaborating with ransomware groups in positions where they have access to government resources? So I don't know for sure, but that's what they're claiming.
Well, at least Lapsus hasn't come back because they got that 12-year-old in England. So
that's
one
true.
down.
All right. Well,
one for the good guys.
Third story, a security researcher who hijacked the Python and PHP libraries CTX and PHP pass claims they did not have malicious intent and that it was all just a bug bounty exercise. So this security researcher, his name's Eunice Aiden, he tells Bleeping Computer his rationale for stealing the developer's AWS tokens was to demonstrate the maximum impact of the exploit. So even though he claims this was ethical research, it did go a step beyond your typical proof of concept. And so many people are casting doubt because obviously stealing secrets stored in environment variables, you could argue crosses the line.
It's, we wanted to talk about this a bit because of the supply chain aspect. So there was research that was done early last year, that talked about how a researcher put a whole bunch of callbacks into common Python libraries that people could just import. And within a day, he was seeing them from Microsoft. He was seeing them from Amazon and Apple. Once again, no victim blaming here. It very common. I'm the laziest coder in the world because I don't really know what I'm doing. So I just try to find another library that someone's written and I type import. So this is just a really hard thing to figure out unless you're doing a lot of CI/CD pipeline. But for me, what's fascinating about here is people get really, when I talk about supply chain, they think SolarWinds and they think, oh, they compromise the build server of a machine and they put in code that was pre-review, and so it's just embedded, and then it got all the way down, which is certainly a path. But I think there is just people don't have the visibility for this, but just how much is probably being done by just either compromising libraries, or by creating your own that looks similar enough and you import that instead. And I don't think it's ending anytime soon.
I mean, it's the researcher. You can say what you will about going too far. I know the CFAA was just kind of redesigned a little bit about, is this good intent or good faith research? You can go back and forth and have that argument, and we're all going to probably come down on different sides of it. I think it exercises that there is a potential for an exploit. And to your point about supply chain, this is code that everyone uses. I think this really kind of validates the idea of an SBOM, of that CI/CD pipeline that we're continues trying to reinforce about DevSecOps. But I think this is always going to happen, because I don't think this was malicious. I think this just was in the vein of stunt hacking. So, I mean, congratulations, it worked, but like, what was, I didn't get it. I just don't get it.
Clubbing seals in the bathroom. Yeah, it was going to work because it's going to work, right? Which is the upsetting part. I will notice that this was also called out in the Verizon DBIR of the supply chain aspect and libraries, which we are going to talk about in a bit. But, people are cognizant of it. People realize it, but it's just hard to stop doing, frankly. I don't see a great solution yet. If I had one, that would be
I do. It's us not being lazy. It's us learn to code securely from day one and build all of our things securely. And oh my gosh, Ryan, we both know we're never going to do that. We're just you want me to code? Period. Oh my god.
That's what import is for. That's what CPAN is for. We're good. I think that's pretty much everything we want to talk about for supply chain, but I would love to pivot now. I believe we have a charity challenge today. What's our charity challenge for the day?
Well, do you want to do the charity challenge? I think we have some upcoming events.
God, you're right. Well. I skipped the most important part. Me speaking at RSA. What do we have, Audra?
Yeah, so coming up, we have a whole bunch of stuff happening in June. Everything got pushed back into June, including RSA, which is next week. Can you believe it? So we have Ryan presenting a presentation there, a session, which I'm excited to see that. And then we also have a coffee talk scheduled at RSA. That's June 9th, 11 o'clock Pacific time. Splunk Insider MiniCon. That's something that Mick has been working around the clock to organize. We're really excited. It's going to be like a conference inside a conference at .conf, which is happening in Las Vegas, June 13th through the 16th. You can also register online. It's conf.splunk.com. Boss of the SOC 7 launches this year at .conf, and you can register at the link on your screen. And then we're also having a coffee talk with Kovar. This is with Mauricio Velasco with the threat research team, and the date is to be decided. I believe that's going to be happening.
We had sadly Mauricio had a bit of COVID last week, so we missed our filming slot. We have a lot coming up, but we're hoping to film this week and then play on one of our off weeks very shortly. But don't miss it. Threat research team does incredible work on ransomware detections, and overall, if you're not familiar with their work, and ESCU and research.splunk.com, we'll probably be touching on all of that. So highly recommend it when it comes soon.
Yes. All right, let's play the clip now for Charity Challenge.
And now, Splunk's Cybersecurity 60-second Charity Challenge. Remember the rules. You've got to get through an entire subject in 60 seconds, or you donate to today's charity of choice. Good luck! Well, first up, Drew, what is our charity of choice? I think you had it lined up for us to take a look at. Drew, the producer.
Oh, I have it here.
You have it here.
It's Last Ride Inc., right? Isn't that what we decided on this week? And this is a charity that focuses on veterans, making sure that they receive a dignified burial in a national cemetery. And we chose this with Memorial Day weekend as a tribute to veterans. So that is the charity. And the topic this week is LOLBins. Yeah?
It is. And sadly, Mick, I think you beat me last time we played. Or wait, who won? My stand-in or Mick?
You did.
You won.
I won.
You won.
Yes.
What about
neither Audra nor Haley won, Ryan? You did, even in absentia.
good to be
We both had to donate.
Okay.
This is what happens when you leave.
This is what happens when everyone plays. Great. Well, in that case, how about I go first?
Sure.
Make it easier for you, Mick. So you can crush me. All right. So LOLBins is not just a great name, but it's also a fun way to talk about a real cybersecurity threat. If you're not aware of the lulls or living off the land, it means that adversaries are using existing tools that are on systems, Windows, Unix, Linux, whatever, like copy, move, psexec, certutil, to primarily gain persistence and then to perform lateral movement. This is not new per se, but adversaries seem to more and more depend on these existing exploits, or rather these existing tools that are a network, rather than bringing their own tooling in to prevent detection from AV tools from triggering. What do I mean by this? The normal method, when Mick and I didn't have as much gray in our hair and then also had more hair, was that adversaries would use implants like poison ivy and bring across tooling to move across the network. Today, they might use a tool like Cobalt Strike to get on the network, but then to have persistence and lateral movement, they're using tools like psexec and copy. This is a lot harder to find, but these are perfect jobs for statistics and ML to find unusual use cases of normal things. I went over.
It was good information.
Good information, but too
Yes.
long. It's too conversational. All right, Mick.
All right, so living off the land binaries. You can thank Christopher and Matt for that term. And let's be clear, I'm not a fan of it, but here we are, so let's lean into it. Think of things like PowerShell or OSA script, or helpful things that reside on computers. I'll even include Explorer. So it breaks down to this. Attackers are using this because it works and it's cheap. It's already there, so you enter an environment and use whatever's there to achieve an objective. Think of like Les Stroud, the Survivor Man of CNE. And much like watching Survivor Man, there are no lulls to be had. Why? Because progress. The bad guys get better, so we get better, so the bad guys get better. It's a new technique. It's not really new, but combine it with fileless malware, and you have something like oil rig that happened. Now, it's a perfect sweet marriage of capability. So it's, the sweet and savory of exploits. What can you do about it? I'm not really sure off the top of my head, but RSA is coming up, and my cyber friends, I'm sure there's many a vendor that would love to explain it to you there. Thanks for coming.
Under time.
I got extra time, yeah.
All right. Well, I think I know who's the winner. I think I'm going to go with Mick this week. Because you were on time, and it made sense to me. So
there we go. So I win again. Thank you, Audra. Mick, I think you're 0 and 37. It's incredible. There we go. Okay. Well, next round up, I will be showing up the receipt or posting it in for the donation for something that we all believe in. And now I think Mick and I are going to move into a little bit of a deep dive. Oh, that's right.
We have something we didn't bring up. Before I go, I just had one other thing I forgot to mention in the upcoming events. Mick is going to take part in this rooftop happy hour panel at RSA. So Mick, what can we expect at this?
I am going to be hanging out with the folks you see there. I'm moderating a panel on resiliency and the CIA triad. So super looking forward to it. If you're at RSA in the neighborhood, stop on by. It's going to be a good time. And I think there's going to be headshots. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, you can get your photo updated.
I do need one. So does a Muppet.
All right. With that, I'll let you guys talk about the DBIR report.
All right. So Mick, you did not read the DBIR report yet. Is that correct?
I read parts of it. When I noticed the colorblind work that they did, I thought it was fantastic. And I kind of from that point, kept scrolling through it. But to me, I love the whole gang over there. It's a fantastic report. Every year it manages to get slightly better. But I feel like it's hard to write it, I imagine, on that side, because it's kind of doom and gloom, yeah?
What was doom and gloom, and so before I did it, for those of you interested, somebody can probably post this in the LinkedIn. I did a live thread every year. I try to do a live thread of me reading it and just off the cuff thoughts, some of which I get very wrong, and people like Alex Pinto, one of the authors, goes ahead and live corrects me. So that's always fun. But my biggest thing is I did a pre-estimate of what I thought would be in the Verizon DBIR, and going in cold, Mick, what would be your best bets of what's in the DBIR this year?
Slightly worse than last year, and OT is a big deal.
So interestingly, OT did not come up as much as I thought. Now, there was a 200% increase in OT data submitted this year because it went from 1% to 3%. So
That's wow, weird,
numbers don't lie. 200%.
right?
Thank you.
Statistics, my friend.
I guess this is not an issue. It's just kind of what's not surprising, right? Like I said, ransomware would be a big thing. It was.
Yeah.
I said BEC would be a big thing. That was actually the real threat. They kind of hit on that. And then I guess this is my own bias, and it showed not to be so much true, but APTs reduced in volume but higher in impact, which I guess for me, for those of you who didn't grow up in the cybers in the early teens, like it was just nonstop. Like if you were in a defense industrial base or a U.S. government or Fortune 100, 1000, like you would go weeks with an APT attack email every week, every day. It was just consistent, non-ending. And today, it seems a lot less. It feels to me, anecdotally, that the impact is much greater, but the volume is less. And I thought that would be reflected in the report, and it wasn't, at least in my opinion.
I think that the APT groups and criminal groups, the capabilities that have gotten to the point where they're almost blended, and that you can have a criminal incident that would have just as much impact as an APT group. So the capabilities are kind of meshing, and that's also the attacks that are known, right?
Which, I talked about this a little bit in the thread, but one of the things I discussed is the bias of the report, because I do believe you have to be this tall before you start reporting into something like Verizon DPIR. Saying that, the sort of organizations that are getting targeted consistently and detecting consistently APT threats are that tall, but they may not also be willing to share, data. So I will. This is a full call out to the wonderful people over at Verizon. They already do a great job at. They put out their biases. They release the data that they have in various frameworks, so you can make your own conclusions. One of the things that I found fascinating over the last couple months is people have been doing the end of the year security reports. Those are only the best people do those sort of things, Mick. But
I know I've heard there's a great one coming up soon. Great one
coming up sometime in July. Anyway, we'll talk about that more. But everyone's reporting this huge increase in attacks, and to me, it's a little bit of a thing. Like I realize this is my
causation correlation.
Ransomware. Yeah, well, like ransomware tells you when it pops you, so like you're gonna have greater detections because ransomware has increased. Ergo, there have been more incidents because you're being informed. I don't actually know how true that is, but then I look back at my anecdotal remembrance of like we were detecting APT threats daily or weekly when I had a real job, and now that doesn't seem to be the case, partly because of things like LOLBins. What do you think? Like,
so I think the attacks are going to increase. I think the nation state attacks are shifting and pivoting away from, even when you think LOLBins, flawless malware, shifting from that to something else that we're going to build detections for that. I think the amount of attacks has increased, but I think the amount of reporting entities has increased as well. I do think, just the way devices work, the amount of technology that keeps increasing presence, you're going to have more attacks. So I don't know if that's a fair barometer. Like there's going to be attacks, right? Always. Right. But has it gotten better or worse, or proportionally remained the same? And I think I don't know if it's gotten worse.
We have a comment in from David Bianco, our newest Surge team member here. Maybe the total volume of attacks is relatively constant, but either they are spread out or more around more targets, or there is a bumper that just popped up. Well done, producer Drew, hand of God from the back.
What is that, Drew?
It's mind-blowing, Drew.
That's so good. Did that cost extra? It didn't cost extra, did it?
I don't think so. We'll have to pay him some doggy treats here later. So, exactly.
So yeah, to that exact point, but what's the solution for that? You saw a lot of Senate movement, a lot of CISA requesting incident reporting and increased incident reporting. And I think that's really going to be the only way that gets normalized as far from a data perspective. But then entities like Verizon wouldn't really do the report, right? It would be someone like CISA that does it.
Well, and the way most of that stuff is written up, it's very obfuscated. It's hard to actually get real detail in because, to my knowledge, they're not using something as granularly wonderful as Veris. That was actually something when I was in the DoD, I tried to pull out, was that Veris report could actually be really well used by the U.S. government just because the framework is pretty inclusive. A couple other things that popped up for me reading through. If you are in a threat hunting role or you're trying to do tabletop exercises, there's just a whole bunch of great material here of places that they see large focuses on and that you can kind of just take and utilize for yourself. Don't rethink the wheel. Just say like, hey, it turns out that these are the top action varieties in my industry, or these are the areas that we're seeing the biggest impact. I call out specifically in my thread that, at one point they kind of go through the different industries and then talk about the different basically actions, I believe they refer, or basically varieties of breaches. And if you look at arts and entertainment, it just kind of looks like all the colors everywhere. If you look at something like the financial industry, it's very clear defined patterns. And part of that, in my opinion, is just because of regulations. But it shows that these are not the same. Like, a arts and entertainment company has a way different threat model than a finance company.
Right. Well, I know what defenses, if I'm a bad guy, I know what defenses are mandated to be in place by compliance, right?
Yep.
And that's not going to be the same for a banking as to an EDU or a hospital. And that's the attack vector is based on that, right?
100%. So we are just over 30 minutes here, 33, which is a little long for us. So I think we're going to call this a quit for the day because we're about to have 2 straight more weeks of LinkedIn Live. So we'll be doing one at RSA, like a special wrap-up show. Then we're going to be doing one at least at .conf. And then we'll probably be coming back right after that for a normal session. Right now, we'll probably take a week after that. We'll do one before July. And then we're going to take a break, I think. So that's the goal.
That is the goal, my friend. Well, I think thanks for joining us, everybody. Ryan, friend, I'll see you on Sunday.
I will see you on Sunday. And for anyone at RSA, feel free to find us and say hello. And we'd love to chat to you. So that's all we have. Drew, take us away.